Hello everyone, my name is Kevin Carlson. I'm a mortgage broker here in Canada. Thank you so much for joining me on my YouTube channel to learn a little bit more about mortgage financing. HSBC Bank, or Hong Kong Shanghai Banking Corporation, was founded way back in 1865. Since then, they have grown by leaps and bounds all over the world. They're in over 60 countries, including the US, Canada, and Europe. They are actually the largest bank in Europe right now. They are offering under 1% interest rates on a variable rate term for 5 years. Now, this is basically unprecedented. It's much lower than what we have at many other banks, and it's sure to just be a rate special that probably won't last for very long. Before I talk about the HSBC 0.99 interest rate that's being offered right now, I'm going to go over a little bit of the history about HSBC and why you might want to reconsider doing business with them. So if you're only interested in getting the very lowest interest rate possible, and you don't care who the lender is, or what their reputation is, or what their clientele is, then certainly just skip ahead to here where I talk about the mortgage itself. So before we talk about HSBC, we need to learn a little bit more about money laundering. So money laundering is what criminal organizations use to use the proceeds of crime, so drug sales, that sort of thing, to get the money into the banking system so that they can actually use it. So criminal organizations rely on money laundering to take money that they sold drugs on the street and turn it into actual cash in the bank that can use to transfer money around the world. Transferring cash dollars around the world for these drug organizations is not really feasible. It's a massive undertaking to transfer actual currency, whether it be Canadian dollars or US dollars or whatever currency it is. It's a lot of work just transmitting that paper. So it has to be done digitally somehow, and HSBC isn't the only bank, but it's one of the main ones that has been connected with some of the drug cartels and other criminal organizations around the globe. So money laundering is highly regulated in Canada as well as in the US and all over the world and in Europe. So there are rules and guidelines that banks must follow to show that they are watching out for criminal organizations that set up shell companies and that sort of thing to move money back and forth around the world to launder their money and get it so that it's usable. HSBC's bit of a checkered past starts way back in 2003 as well as in 2010. US banking regulators basically told them that they need to do a little bit better at preventing money laundering going through their banks and have a bit more of a watchful eye on banking transactions around the globe. In July of 2012, the US Senate released a report that the HSBC Bank has been going against their rules and regulations when it comes to anti-money laundering and anti-terrorism financing. So hot on the heels of that report, that December, the US regulators fined HSBC Bank $1.9 billion. That's billion. Now, they're a bank. They're one of the largest banks in the world. $1.9 billion is certainly a lot of money. But to a bank of that size, it really isn't. It was just a little bit of a slap on the wrist. Since that fine in 2012, HSBC has had ongoing difficulties when it comes to regulations all over the world in the countries that they do business, where they're going against the best practices when it comes to preventing money laundering by drug organizations and terror organizations. If you're interested in learning more about HSBC, there's a really good documentary on Netflix on their docuseries called Dirty Money. Season 1 has an episode called Cartel Bank, where they go over a lot of this in detail and have witness accounts as well as journalist interviews where they talk about all of their findings during that time. So fast forwarding a little bit to this year, on September 21st of 2020, the International Consortium of Investigative Journalists released a report on their 16-month investigation into HSBC and other banks when it comes to money laundering practices. This report, coming out in 2020, was a clear indication that HSBC was not done with some of their old practices of doing business with drug cartels and potentially with also terrorist organizations. On December 7th of 2020, that's this year, Dominion Lending Centres, the largest mortgage company in Canada, which I'm also affiliated with, announced that HSBC will now be a bank that we can actually send mortgage clients to. So if you want to get an HSBC mortgage and you want the convenience of working with a mortgage broker rather than trying to get a hold of HSBC directly, you can now do that here in Canada. You just can't get it through me. I have made the very personal decision not to support HSBC Canada. If you want to have a Dominion Lending Centres mortgage broker work with you to help you obtain an HSBC mortgage, I'll put a link in the description below to Dominion Lending Centres where you can search for a mortgage broker like myself in your area. So on to these HSBC mortgages. So I did call HSBC and I was able to speak to somebody. It took just about an hour for me to get through to somebody, but that's to be expected when they roll out a rate special like this. That's certainly within reason. What I was able to learn from HSBC on my phone call with them was that this mortgage of 0.99% is specifically for purchase only with less than 20% down. So you have to be purchasing a home and pay mortgage insurance premium. So if you put 20% down or more, you don't have to have an insured mortgage through CMHC or one of the mortgage insurers. But for this program to enable to get that prime minus to get the 0.99 interest rate, you have to be putting less than 20% down. So the mortgage must be insured. This is also a variable rate. So a variable rate is not fixed. It's the opposite. A variable rate rides the prime lending rate. So as of today, the prime lending rate with HSBC is 2.45%, and then the discount off of that is minus 1.46%, giving you 0.099% as of today. So what may happen is as prime goes up and down, so does your interest rate and so does your payment on a monthly basis. Now, as with pretty well every variable rate out there, even though it rides the prime lending rate, you are allowed to lock it in pretty well at any time. So what that means is that you can take your variable rate, and if prime starts to go too high and you get a little bit nervous, then you can call up the bank and tell them that you want to lock the rate in for the rest of your term. Now, here's a little bit of downside with the variable rate with one of the chartered banks. The chartered banks, unlike our broker lenders, have a retail structure. So if you have a look at the rates at HSBC right now, their posted rates are actually quite high. They're really high. So when you go to convert your variable rate into a fixed rate, then you're kind of at the mercy of the branch to look at their price list and a potential discount. So it's very much unknown as to if you want to convert this into a fixed rate, what kind of a rate you're going to be locking it into. So you might start out with a really low rate at 0.99, but as prime starts to increase, then so does your interest rate and so do your payments. So the idea would be to lock it in for the remainder of your term. What I wasn't able to find out from HSBC regarding these mortgages with these deep discounts is if there's any pitfalls. Some big pitfalls to be cautious of is what happens if you want to refinance or you're moving and you end up selling your house to somebody that you actually know, you sell it to a family member. Some mortgages out there prevent that. The only way to get out of a mortgage like that would be to sell in an arm's length sale, which means you have to get it listed on MLS through your realtor, and then you have to sell it through a real estate company to somebody you don't know. That's an arm's length sale. What happens if you want to refinance your house or take out some equity or do something like that? You might be prevented from that. It's really too hard to tell. I would highly recommend that you double check the fine print of that mortgage if you're going through HSBC. It is crucial to make sure that you're not going to have any pitfalls once you sign on to the dotted line for a mortgage like that. If you're going through a Dominion Lending Centres mortgage broker, you can trust that their advice will be solid and they'll be able to advise you to any pitfalls that you might be exposed to. The HSBC website outlines that the prepayment privileges are just as good as any other bank that we typically work with. So you're allowed to do 20% lump sum payment, increase your payments by 20%, and then there's an annual cap of no more than 20% of a full prepayment between those two. Also, it appears as though after 3 years that this variable rate mortgage becomes fully open and there won't be any penalties, which is actually a little bit of a benefit that really none of our other lenders have that. So it's not a bad little deal to have something like that built into a variable where you're not riding it right for the full 5 years. You can actually break away from it if you want to. I'll be putting links to quite a few news stories and maybe even some videos when it comes to HSBC that might be helpful as well. So have a look in the description for some of those links as well. If you're looking to purchase a home somewhere in Canada and you're looking to get a variable rate and you don't mind not going through HSBC and you're looking to get the best rate possible, then certainly get in touch with me through my website. I'd be more than happy to work with you. Thank you once again for joining me on my YouTube channel and learning a little bit more about mortgage financing. Have yourself a great day.